March 6th, 1996. This is the Sixth Principles of the Infinite Way class. Good evening, everybody. We're still on the nature of error, and I think we're probably more than halfway through this class. After tonight, we'll finish error tonight. And then we just have the nature of mind, which is probably a couple of weeks, and then we'll do a week on supply and a week on healing, and then a week specifically on the principles that hopefully will all have been covered and will come out of the previous material. And that will sort of be the extent of this class, I think. A couple of things came up this week. One is that we're calling this part of the class the nature of error, but it could just as easily be called the nature of good or the nature of evil or any of those things. We often get the idea in reading The Infinite Way or listening to various teachers that the illusion is the error, and that sickness is the hypnotism, and that lack is the hypnotism. But the fact is that anything which is perceived through the five senses is the hypnotism. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about five sense input. We're talking about 3D input. So keep that in mind. People focus so much. I mean, it's like the focus is on healing and solving lack and solving various discords and things like that. And so people get into the mindset that that's what the hypnotism is about. But no, hypnotism is the 10,000 things, Lao Tzu calls them. All of this, everything we see, everything that comes in through our mind is hypnotism. I mean, it comes in through our senses. Maybe that will come up in the nature of the mind. This is really starting to walk very much into the nature of mind, and I'm sort of trying to keep them sort of distinct so we can deal with something, one thing at a time, rather than having them flow too much together. Any event, we'll say more about this tonight. The other thing, Dulcie was kind enough to remind me of a Zen saying. We were talking about the silence, and the silence maybe not being the right word, because when we're in the silence there's sounds around us, and so we chose the word stillness, or we suggested you could use whatever your word you wanted. And Dulcie reminded me of a Zen master who said that silence is not the absence of sound, it's the absence of self. And that's the silence I'm talking about. That's the one. Call it what you like. But that's the point of the awareness exercise, is to lead us to that place where there is an absence of self. And one of the characteristics of that place is there is no thought going on. That's the self with the small s. And thought and self with the small s are synonymous for all practical purposes. So let's sort of do some review of what we said last week. I didn't think it was getting to the level that I wanted to get to. I didn't think people were hearing that real clearly, what we were saying last week. So I'm going to sort of say it again, and I really hope that there's feedback or questions or whatever, so that we can bring up some dialogue or cause some conversation, so that I know that what I'm saying is being heard, because that's what this is all about, is to make sure that we all hear explicitly what the principles of the infinite way are, so that we all know what they are and have heard them and can go back and review them and use them. I think this will also make listening to Joel's tapes be available to us at a much different level, because having heard these things in a nice sequential manner, then you'll hear Joel say them, and it'll click differently, and oh, that's what he's talking about, or oh yeah, or stuff like that. Whereas before we've gone formally through a process like this, we tend to only hear those things which we do recognize and not even hear parts of the tapes, or ignore the part that isn't consistent with what we currently believe. So that's another purpose for this. It will, having heard the tapes from Margaret Johnson on the nature of mind, which is going to be our primary source, I have gone back and read Goldsmith's The Thunder of Silence. And he says all of that right in there, and I have read that book 3 times, and I was listening to Margaret Johnson talking about it, and I thought it was all new stuff, and I didn't hear it. I didn't see it before. I just didn't have that frame of reference, and so doing all this stuff explicitly is the right thing to do. Okay, we talked about hypnotism as being a result of our letting what can be called universal human mind or carnal mind or humanhood, any of these words. We talked about the fact that human consciousness is as good a word as any. Humanhood is really made up of the belief in good and evil, the belief in 2 powers. And whenever I say good and evil, I also mean tall and short, and ugly and pretty, and all those words. Duality is the right word. The nature of the human mind is dualism. It's the belief in dualism that comprises the carnal mind, the human mind, and it is our collective belief in good and evil. I mean, it is in all of our consciousnesses. We're all born into the human condition, and we're all trained to believe in good and evil and dualism, let's say. And we all believe in dualism. We believe in good and evil. And that belief itself is self-sustaining. The reason we believe in it is because we believe in it. It's a self-sustaining, it's like a catch-22. There's no way out of this except God consciousness. Human consciousness has this belief pattern, and these beliefs, as a result, get put into the minds of each individual human that takes form as little babies and such like. The babies get trained to believe in the human belief and in the belief in the dualistic belief, and then that belief now becomes a supporting part of humanhood, and that consciousness now makes up for the ones that move on or come back into another life or something. So it's a self-sustaining fiction. It's just a belief. It has no more reality. The whole belief in good and evil, Satan, the devil, carnal mind, none of these things has any more reality except just the collective belief in good and evil. And it has no more power than any other lie. If somebody comes up to me and tells me a lie and I know it's a lie, it has no power. I just say, no, that's a lie, and I wander off. Now, if somebody comes up and tells me a lie and I believe it, I may base my entire life on that lie and wind up with a disastrous life. But the fact is that the lie had no power. The error was that I believed it. I let it into my consciousness. So we have sailing around us this belief. And it is this belief system that is the problem, that defines the 3D world, that does the whole thing. The real nature of us is an individualization of the consciousness of God. And that individualization has the nature of God. It is spirit. It is not material. It is harmonious. It is love-based. It is not fear-based. That is the reality. And if we did not confuse ourselves with these beliefs in good and evil, with the 3D consciousness, then that would be our experience. Each individual is not wrong or evil or anything like that. Each individual is just ignorant. We are ignorant, and our ignorance is trained into us. Our ignorance is the belief in the universal hypnotism, and our ignorance is we are as ignorant as we allow the universal hypnotism to impinge on us. We're ignorant of who we really are. We're ignorant of our real relationship with God, and that ignorance separates us from God and from God consciousness and makes us available to the universal human consciousness. We're ignorant in that we believe in good and evil and the power of good and evil. And notice the power of both good and evil. And we're ignorant in the result of all this belief system, all the fear-based beliefs that we have that we're trained in, self-preservation, all these things that we base our lives on that are the things that cause us the great pain and misery. The belief that we have to take care of ourselves is confronted by the fact that we're obviously incapable of taking care of ourselves. I mean, there's 5 billion of them and one's me, but I'm going to take care of myself. The fact that the apparent complexity of the human situation is way beyond the ability of my mind. The fact is that I am powerless, and yet I'm trained to take care of myself and try harder, and all the silly things that we're conditioned with, the basic belief that there's something wrong with me, and the equally fundamental belief that I can do something about it. And these two drive my misery for lifetime after lifetime. And I'm absolutely convinced that there's something wrong with me, and I'm absolutely convinced that I can do something about it. And this is the foundation of endless lifetimes of misery. It's all the belief in good and evil. It's just our ignorance, and our ignorance is reflected in our acceptance of the human consciousness, the humanhood, the universal consciousness that's about us. Some of the notes I've made, the collective consciousness is the sum of all of the 3D experiences that people are having. None of that is real. That's all hypnotism. But here again, we have the hypnotism sustaining the hypnotism. I mean, the substance of the hypnotism is the hypnotic experiences that we have. The problem is that some of it is apparently useful for survival value in the 3D world, and that manages to give it, make it believable to us. A lot of the stuff that we hear is useful if we're operating in a 3D consciousness. It is useful for survival. We all have that experience. A lot of the things that we had to do in order to survive while we were out there drinking are no longer appropriate. But because our consciousness is raised as a result of becoming sober, or we became sober as a result of our consciousness being raised, but The problem is that a lot of the things that universal consciousness has in it seem to have survival value. The things that universal parent says seem to have survival value, and because that seems to be the case, we buy that, and we buy the rest of the package with it. The fact is, it's all lies. There's no truth in it at all. The good stuff, the bad stuff, it is all lies. It is all hypnotism. It is all just a self-sustaining thing. It is all subliminal. We used the word subliminal last week, like subliminal advertising, and the fact is that it does come into our minds subliminally. If you do nothing, you will be impacted by this universal consciousness, because in fact there really is only one consciousness, and we connect in our consciousness. And we talked a little bit last week about the fact that we tend to pick up those things which are attuned to what we are in this particular lifetime and who we are, so we tend to pick up the white Anglo-Saxon male Protestant universal beliefs, or the Manhattan Beach female universal beliefs, or whatever. There are like collective consciousness. There's definitely a different consciousness for United States people than there is for Chinese, and there's definitely a different consciousness on almost any basis at all, and we seem to fit into the groups we fit into, and we seem to be more in tune with those beliefs, and so they come into us, but it all happens subliminally, and we're never aware of it, and we never have any defenses against it, and it runs our life, and as a result it adds to our human experiences, and it supports the humanhood, and we go around again. Now, it's important to realize that it has absolutely no power. It has no intelligence. It's nothing. It's just nothingness. It's just belief reinforcing itself. There's not even anyone who believes it. The ones who believe it are part of it. It has no reality. It has no power. It has no intelligence. It has no law. It has no substance. It has no activity. It has no presence. It has nothing. It is just appearance. And again, I don't know how to say it more explicitly. There is nothing. Are you seeing what I'm saying about this self-sustaining hypnotism? It's like if a bunch of people suppose we're in a stage play, and a bunch of people are hypnotized by the hypnotist. And so they all have this belief, and as a result of their being hypnotized, they hypnotize the hypnotist. Okay? And so now we have everybody hypnotizing everybody else, and they're self-sustaining, and there's no way out of it, and yet they're all hypnotized for a mutual story. We talked last week about the hypnotist, hypnotizing a subject and telling the subject there's a white poodle on the stage, and this subject sees the white poodle. I mean, it has reality to it. All right. What we've got a bunch of hypnotists all standing up on the stage, and they're all hypnotizing each other about the white poodle. They all see the white poodle now. We don't just have the one subject seeing the white poodle, and the hypnotist knows better, and the hypnotist can snap his fingers and say, "Wake up." Now, everybody on the stage is a hypnotist, and they're all hypnotized into thinking there's a white poodle, and so they're hypnotizing each other, only they don't think it's hypnotized, telling them there's a white poodle, and so everybody thinks it's a white poodle, and there's nobody to snap their fingers.
Why doesn't God snap his fingers?
God doesn't even see it. God doesn't even see it. This is all in the 3D world. It doesn't even exist. It has no reality. Why would God snap its fingers?
But wouldn't that be kind of what enlightenment is? To have somebody snap their fingers and you see that it's all not real?
The enlightenment is the result of you your individual consciousness realizing its oneness with God. It is not the result of God realizing its oneness with your individual consciousness. And the snapping your fingers would be like God knowing what God knows. God knows there's no pool. God knows there's nobody there hypnotized. I mean, the hypnotists are part of the hypnotism. That's the level where all these little analogies break down. Those people that I'm talking about that are on the stage hypnotizing each other, they're part of the hypnotism. There's no reality to it.
I have a mental understanding of this that I haven't yet really had an experiential process with it. And I feel like if all of us lived together in this house and we're the only ones that we spoke to, and we continually reinforce these, that would probably come about. And the challenge lies in going out into the world where everyone either doesn't know about this or doesn't seem to know about this, and interacting with people in a way that I hold these beliefs true myself, and I don't feel distracted by all these other people who don't think this way.
Yeah,
or I don't have any response when people talk about a mother's job is to worry, or they believe that showing their love for someone's about being all anxious and concerned and worried about them, or
That's the problem. I had a great example of that this morning. Somebody came by and made a comment about somebody, and the comment was sustaining the hypnotism, and of course I didn't respond because that person wasn't ready to hear that. But the problem is that it is out there sustaining itself, and it's not only sustaining itself consciously, as in the cases we're talking about, but it's also sustaining itself subconsciously. And that's why I say the three things that we can do to raise our own level, and we have to work on ourselves, are: one, do your daily reading and listening to tapes and such like, deprogram and reprogram, and learn the letter of the truth, which is what this is all about, because it helps a lot to know the letter of the truth first. Two, hang out with people who know the truth. Hang out with higher consciousnesses as much as you can. And three, meditate. And through meditate, through going into the silence, you will have the experience. It will happen more quickly if you do the work and know the truth, and it will happen more quickly to the extent that you hang out with like-minded people. But the things you do are those three. Those are the ones that I know that work. The other thing, which will come up today, is protective work, which is part of the infinite way, which Joel taught, and Barbara teaches it, and others teach it. And protective work is another element of deprogramming. It's to remind ourselves of truth, and to it's hard. It's not to combat the power of humanhood, because it has no power, but it is to remind ourselves of the truth, and to remind ourselves of the fact that the universal human consciousness has no power, and it's worthwhile on a daily basis, first thing in the morning, establishing the truth in your mind, so that when this presents itself to you, as it did this morning to me, when this person said that, and my immediate reaction was nonsense. And not to him, but I knew that was nonsense, because I had in fact done my protective work before that, and it was current in my consciousness that that's not the truth that I'm believing. And all we can do until we have the experience is make our best guess. And my sponsor refers to this as a spiritual laboratory, and we have a theory that we're trying to prove right now, and the theory is that we're trying to prove is the infinite way, apparently, because we're here hearing about the infinite way and reading about it. So until we have the experience, what we have is a theory about the infinite way, and we're attempting to prove it, and we're running an experiment. And that's all we can do, is read about the truth and understand it, and the experiment is do your daily reading, do your daily takes, do your daily meditation, and hang out with higher consciousness people and see what happens, And as my sponsor always pointed out to me, if I always operate from my current highest understanding, then either it will turn out to be true and I will grow spiritually, or it will turn out to be false and I will grow spiritually. So, the fact is that we don't know until we know, but there's excellent reason to believe these principles. They're absolutely consistent with Lao Tzu and Taoism. They're absolutely consistent with Buddhism. They're absolutely consistent with Jesus. They're absolutely consistent with Sufism. They're absolutely consistent with Zen. They're absolutely consistent with Advaita Vedanta. Every mystic that has ever lived and reported what he saw has seen the same thing, and it is what we're talking about. Joel was a mystic who saw the same thing that other people saw. The only difference is the audience is different, so the expression of the truth is different. But
how do you deal with people like with cancer?
Who deal with cancer?
Joel.
He cured it. Joel knew the truth that there is no cancer. In fact, cured it isn't even the right word. People who came to Joel and reported to him the appearance of cancer were confronted by a consciousness which knew that all there was harmony, and that cancer was part of the universal hypnotism, was part of the human belief, that it had no power to sustain itself, and that the reality of the person who was really there, who is this spiritual person, not the physical person, but the person who's really there was this spiritual being which has nothing but the attributes of God, and that cancer was impossible. And Joel, in knowing it himself, at the elevation that he knew it, which was very impressive, by the way, and in the fact that the person had come to him, they had allied their consciousness with him, so that as he knew that, he elevated them to that consciousness, and it disappeared. The appearance disappeared, and the harmonious appearance would replace it. And Joel's success rate was 80 or 90% on anything. It didn't matter whether it was cancer or children being born with no arms and legs, or incredible healings. Alright, so that's essentially what we had said last week, and it's been restated now, I think, perhaps in somewhat more depth. The solution to hypnotism is the stuff we just mentioned. The way you deal with error is bring truth. The way you deal with darkness is bring light. When you turn on the light, darkness disappears. It's not that it goes somewhere. It's not that it has to be overcome. You don't have to have stronger light than there is darkness. The fact is that darkness is just an absence of light. Error is just an absence of truth. So you just bring truth to the error. As I said earlier, when you recognize a lie, it has no power. If you recognize cancer as a lie, it has no power. If your consciousness is high enough to see the truth, or if you are connected sufficiently with God and can ask God to show you the truth, not to heal it. You don't need to bring God power to fix the evil power of cancer, but you can make contact with God and ask to be shown the truth, and the disharmonious appearance will disappear.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't Robert know that and stop the appearance of the illness?
Yeah, we talked a little about that last week. The fact is,
I don't understand.
yeah, in order to deal with Parkinson's disease, you have to, I mean, it's the level of consciousness is what it's about. Robert does not have Parkinson's disease. And Robert absolutely knows that Robert does not have Parkinson's disease. Now, everybody in the world sees Parkinson's disease. And Robert sees that appearance. But Robert is so clear about the fact that that isn't him that the whole question of healing doesn't arise. For the Infinite Way, for Joel, healing was a device for the sake of his students. He was demonstrating the truth of the principles. Robert's consciousness, he is so clear that there's no issue. I mean, why doesn't God cure Robert's Parkinson's disease?
It's not a problem for him.
There is no Parkinson's. There is no Robert, and there is no Parkinson's disease. There's nothing to be done. And Robert is so clear about there is nothing to be done that he does nothing. And it's interesting. Ramana Maharshi was one of the very clearest Indian saints, and he apparently died of cancer. Ramakrishna was another one of the very highest Indian saints, and he died of cancer. Nisargadatta Maharaj was a very clear guru, and he died of cancer.
Is that because their disciples saw cancer? The people around them saw cancer?
Or they came into the world, when they took on the body, that was the scenario. I mean, that's the way the play was written. That was the scenario. When Robert took on that body, it was a body that was going to have Parkinson's disease and probably die that way. It's not... it's all a play, and God wrote the play for His own purposes, and that's an actor in the play, and this person on the stage dies of cancer. Now, the actor didn't die of cancer; the part, the role he played died of cancer. The actor didn't die of cancer, and.
So Robert has the consciousness to heal himself if he wanted to, but he doesn't see that there's anything. Doesn't care that there's anything to heal. I mean, did Joel have the consciousness not to heal if he didn't want to? Do you understand? Was he above healing? Was he beyond that?
I don't. That's an interesting question. The phrasing isn't right. It's not that Robert has the consciousness not to heal himself. Whenever we talk about it, we're talking about it in the 3D sense. Robert has the consciousness to know it's all a dream, and he's going to wake up tomorrow morning, and it won't matter whether in the dream there was a healing or not. Robert knows that there is no one who has Parkinson's disease. Robert is absolutely always aware of the fact that he is no more in that body than he is in yours. So if Robert has Parkinson's disease, he also has every other disease and no disease, and he's a newborn baby. I mean, Robert is God, and he knows that. And the whole issue of that body and Parkinson's disease is not even irrelevant. It's unreal. It's hypnotism. I mean, we're talking about the white poodle having cancer.
But Joel was that high to know that too about everybody, right?
Possibly at the end. He was not that high, certainly in 28 or in 45. He had a great deal of clarity about that, and he knew that there was no... he knew the non-power of this appearance. He had enough altitude, certainly, to describe everything we're talking about tonight, and he knew that back in 45 when he wrote The Infinite Way, so I assume that probably all came to him in 1928 when the actual ability to heal came, although over the next few years the understanding of that, the words for it came.
But you're trying to ask, why is this God's will and why is that not God's will? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? For whatever reason, the first case, that was the outcome that was supposed to be for whatever demonstration was being made.
But it's an interesting question. And we'll talk more about it when we get to healing. Another thing that comes in is Joel obviously doesn't heal anybody that doesn't come to him for healing, for example. Even though his kind of consciousness about the people he heals and his consciousness about the people he doesn't heal is the same.
Right.
There's a different question there. So he clearly... But see, the whole question is wrong. It's not a matter of healing.
Right.
The problem with all of this is that we keep talking like there's something to heal and someone to be healed, and that's not the case.
So the healing is all part of the play then, basically.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
As is the disease.
Because doesn't it come back to hypnotism? It's just like saying heal health and sickness. It's just the same duality.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like healing the pool. The hypnotized person on the stage that's in that white pool is running around the stage very concerned about the fact that white pool has a limp. And he wants to do something about it. And everybody else is very clear that there is no white pool. Robert's very clear that there is no white pool. Would you like to say something?
I just really like the mirage understanding where we're all in a car and we're driving along the desert and we see a lake and we stop because we see the lake, and Barbara and Joel, drives up, or Robert, and says, just keep driving, there is no lake. So we keep driving and find that we can drive on through, but we still continue to see the lake. Just because they, what they do explain, or higher consciousness does explain to us, is that it isn't there, even though we're perceiving it as there. And I just feel that's the best solution that I understand for the healing part. It isn't that it's there or not there. It's that you just keep going through the appearance or the movie, or we're all like in a movie screen, or in a movie. And they're telling us that the movie, you can go into another theater. I loved your question earlier on, where why doesn't God just snap his fingers? Well, that would be like, why doesn't he turn the projector off? Well, then we're going to sit in that seat and be damn pissed, because there's nothing. What would we look at?
Well, I think, I don't know, I don't know if I'm not making this really clear, but if he was, is it for a show? Are healings to get people to believe? Are they demonstrations? Is that why it's done? Because if it's nothing to be done anyway, and it doesn't exist anyway, why do it? Like Robert wouldn't do it. We know people that that used to go to satsang that have died.
Yes, Joel certainly does do healing. It's not for show, but for demonstration.
Okay.
Certainly there is an element of demonstration there.
Because if he's beyond that, he wouldn't know that there was no reason to do it in the first place, right?
That's the whole point.
Okay.
That's the whole thing. There is no reason to do it, but...
I don't think he is doing it. He's not doing anything but knowing the nothingness of it. He's not saying, okay, now I'm going to heal this person.
Right.
He's just seeing the nothingness.
But Robert wouldn't even do that. That's the. You see the difference I'm trying to.
And the fact is that the mirage thing breaks down because, in fact, when Joel drives up and says that's really just a mirage, and you look again, there's no water there. As far as the healings happen, the fact is that the appearance does get removed.
So are we all? So is the ultimate goal not to want to be healed, but to know that there's nothing to be healed? That's the ultimate. That would be the ultimate goal. Not to seek a healer to heal yourself, but to get beyond that, to know that there's no real body to even be healed because it's harmonious and there's nothing to be healed.
It depends. Certainly, you must know that there's nothing to be healed, else you will not be able to heal.
That's kind of a catch-22.
Sorry about that, but that's the truth. There will not be an appearance of healing until you know there's nothing to heal. question is, are you in the 4D world or are you in the 3D world? And the fact is we're living between the two worlds, and while you're at a various stages of between, I mean, you've got some of the fourth dimensional knowledge, but you've got the three-dimensional consciousness, and the fact is that, I mean, your foot hurts. Okay? That's your experience. Okay? So you want to deal with the foot. And absolute phrases are really wonderful, but they don't hurt the fact that your foot hurts. Now, I know your foot doesn't hurt because you don't have a foot, but your experience is the foot hurts.
Right.
And that's, it's all a 3D experience. The fact is that there is no you, there is no foot, there is no hurt. But that's not what you're experiencing. It also comes back to the question of in Buddhism, there's two major schools of Buddhism, and one of them, as people attain enlightenment, they go into samadhi and stay there and drop the body, and they're done because they're done with this game, and their consciousness is now elevated enough that they don't need to do it. And there's the other school, and these are the bodhisattvas. And these people get as high as you can get without taking that final step, and they vow to continue to come back and take bodies and teach until everybody is at that point. And that's the whole point of compassion. And two totally different schools, and some go one way and some go the other way. And the fact is that all of it is just a play. And it's all God's play, written by God, being performed by God, and God's the audience, and God's the scenery, and God's everything about it, and God did it for God's own purposes. And I hope God's enjoying it thoroughly.
I am, thanks.
Okay, so now we have an authority that it's a good play. Let's talk a little bit about protective work. Protective work, as I said before, is not to protect yourself from disease or from evil powers or from anything like that. Protective work is to protect you from the subliminal infiltration of these beliefs. Not that the disease has any power, and not really that the universal humanhood has any power, but and words are just not adequate, but let's say that it has a presence. It has no power, but it appears to have a presence. And that presence will affect your consciousness and will affect your experience. And so protective work is to retrain your mind, or not even to retrain your mind, it's to reaffirm the truths in your mind so that when you are confronted with the lie, you can name it the lie. Barbara and Joel both use the example of 2 times 2 equals 5. The example is if you're brought up knowing that 2 times, or believing that 2 times 2 is 5, then whatever you're building will be a disaster. It will continue in the house you're building based on the measuring that uses 2 times 2 equals 5 will continue to not come together right and will continue to fall. And eventually somebody will point out to you that 2 times 2 is 4. And once you have the truth, then you can work. And from that point on, 2 times 2 is 5 is just nonsense, and you recognize it. Once you've learned that 2 times 2 is 4, you will recognize the lie of 2 times 2 is 5. Now, the problem is that people are continually coming to you saying 2 times 2 is 5. And so you need to continually say 2 times 2 is 4. And that's what protective work is all about. It's against the universal belief in two powers. It's not against For me, protective work usually takes the form of remembering consciously reciting to myself some truths in the morning. And then I may, in fact, itemize various things that have no power and remind myself of them, whatever is going on in the world, or I may go through a particular list of things that I have. It's not a meditation as such. It may be meditative in fact that you're doing this, and you may in fact find that in the process of remembering the truths that you remember that you base these statements on, you may get elevated to the point that it feels like a meditation, but the purpose is not that of a meditation. The purpose is to remember these truths so that you will, when confronted with the lie during the day, immediately recognize it as the lie. The truths that I remember are that God is the only power, there is no other power. And God is the only creator. There is no other creator. Everything that was created is created by God. Everything that's real is created by God. Now, we're not talking about the 3D 5 sense stuff. But God is the only creator, and God is the only power, and God is harmonious. And God is omnipresent. Now, the combination of these things result in that there is, in reality, nothing but harmoniousness everywhere. And any appearance of discord, and also any appearance of harmoniousness, if it's an appearance in the 3D world, but for the sake of protective work, any appearance of discord is just an appearance. It has no reality because God did not create discord, and there is no other creator. And it also has no reality in the sense that nothing else has any power, so there is nothing that can have any effect on the harmony, which is the reality of God. It is a legitimate thing for us to expect to experience harmony.
Except three-dimensional thinking.
Mm-hmm. But that's not a power, that's just an influence. It is a legitimate thing to expect harmony if you are in God consciousness. You mean, except in the 3D world, expect good and evil. But if you are working on your own consciousness, and if you are elevating your own consciousness, and if you are aware of the fact that you are one with God, then you can expect harmony in your experience. And I actually go through and remember the specific things that I'm confronted with daily. I remember that there is the possibility of addiction. There is no addiction, because all there is God. God is the substance of all form. God is the only power, and for there to be addiction, it would mean that God was dependent on something other than God. There's no such thing as compulsion, because there is no force other than God that has any power. There are no allergies, because that would mean that God was allergic to God, because God is the substance of all form. Whatever's going on in my life, I will, or my experience, or the people I will remember those truths specifically. Also, it's not limited, protective work is not limited to physical health. I also remember that there are no external there are no external powers at all, but specifically there are no external destructive powers, so I don't have to worry about, I don't have to anticipate destructive rainstorms or tidal waves. There are, people also have no power to be destructive. If I'm in God consciousness, there's no people that can come nigh my dwelling place. There's no terror in terrorists. There's no power in gangs. There's no power in bullets. There's no power in hydrogen bombs. These things are not things that can affect the reality of us. Now, to the extent that I think I'm this three-dimensional body sitting here, I may have problems with those things, but to the extent that I know the truth, I won't. And what I'm doing is I'm reminding myself of the truth so that when I'm confronted with these things, I don't have to accept them. I also don't read the newspaper. That's part of my protective work. And I don't listen to the news. That I consider protective work. And another, just on the topic of protective work, another type of work that's part of the infinite way, and it has to do with the whole question of healing and everything, is what Joel calls world work. And I'm just going to touch that briefly here right now. World work is using your own consciousness to know the truth for the world. Joel saw his mission as preparing his consciousness and the consciousness of others so that they could chip away at this universal human consciousness and destroy it. And Joel was always, he's a bodhisattva. He wants to destroy the 3D world. He wants to destroy the belief in good and evil. He wants to destroy that whole belief system. And world work is using our consciousness to chip away at human consciousness. And it also, often he, and I know Herb Fitch did this, and various other teachers sometimes have essentially meditation groups to work on specific appearances in world problems. Like there was a meditation going around about the Bosnian thing 3 or 4 months ago, where everybody got together and meditated about the Bosnian situation in order to help resolve that.
I heard when Charles Lindbergh made his flight, there was a consciousness, there was a group around the whole world that was doing. Mm-hmm. I don't know the difference between world work there and prayer. Like when a lot of us will get together in AA and they'll say, let's pray for can we all pray for my grandmother who's ill right now? Mm-hmm. Or world work, where you're praying, the difference there.
The difference is
it's the consciousness both times.
It's both times it's consciousness. The difference is that in the case of meditating, what one is doing is knowing truth rather than trying to bring power to bear against a disharmony. And prayer, in the usual sense of prayer, is getting enough people together to ask God to do good for somebody that He'll finally listen. And that's outside of the infinite way of understanding. Now, that may work for a variety of reasons, because there is such a thing as mental power. And in the 3D world, minds have power, and forces can be exerted. But and there may be a high enough consciousness in the prayer group that they're knowing the truth, and that may work. But
I have a question.
Yeah.
Well, Tulsi, when I was sick, I remember that you said you kept me in meditation. What did you do? Because I don't know what to do when people.
Well, I don't keep you there. I take you in and drop. Whatever appearance is coming up, or whoever's sick or calling, or at that moment, whoever it is, there's always 5 or 6 things going on, like with the little Benji and all. Mm-hmm. It's not like we're doing anything other than I just drop you in God's lap is basically what I do. I go into the silence and I lift. And as I'm lifting, what that means is if you're reaching out, you can reach out to that lift. that's going on worldwide, or and if I particularly am, you can, like, I call Doris and she can lift me right out like that, and she doesn't like lift Dulcie. She's just holding the truth. I'm holding the truth about who you are rather than who you're not, and I just hold that.
I don't understand.
It's a difficult terminology. It's about wording. I
don't understand what to do when I want to have some kind of consciousness in response to someone's appearance of being ill. I don't know what to do anymore, because the prayer that I used to say. Is this helping anyone?
Yeah.
The prayer that I used to say.
And we will do this in detail, by the way, when we get to the healing segment of this. But let's explore it to some extent tonight.
Are you sure?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would say, God, I'm having someone in my heart and lifting them to you. That's what I would say in my prayer. I wouldn't pray that they would get better or anything like that. But then I don't know what to do anymore.
And then you get into the silence.
And then after that, you say that, then you go into the silence?
You can say any words, whatever's, and a lot of times it's double talk. It's just comfortable for yourself and for the person. But the important part is to going into that depth of that silence.
Importance is to have the actual realization of God's presence, which is the only power.
And it will take over.
So that's because if we're all one, and we create that experience and allow ourselves to go to the peaceful place or whatever, that if we're all one, it benefits everyone.
It will benefit whoever has allied their consciousness with yours, which is to say the person who has reached out to you for the healing.
Oh, okay.
I think this time is about up. This will unfold. There will be a lot more clarity. We'll come to you next week and the week after when we talk about the nature of mind and what's really going on here, the real mechanism here, and then we will spend a whole day specifically, a whole evening specifically on healing, or as many evenings as we need to, because there's only like 5 minutes left, and this is certainly a subject for a whole evening.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
This goes along with what Joanne asked earlier, and I'm trying to be conscious about hypnotism as I go through my day. And is there an exercise that we can do to sort of recognize it? I know that everything that I see, everything that I sense in my five senses is hypnotism. But is there anything specific to look for? I mean, today I had a little script event sort of, and I thought, I'm reacting to this and I know this is hypnotism. But is there anything specific?
You can remind yourself that it's hypnotism as often as you think to do it. That will chip away at it. It's not, and this is what we talked about earlier, don't look for the specific things which remind you of hypnotism, because it's all hypnotism, and you know that. So the script events are not specifically what reminds you of hypnotism, but there it certainly is more useful to remember it as far as how you feel within the hypnotism. The fact is that those three things continue to be the only things I know to do. You do the work. Barbara says, a tape a day, a half hour of reading a day, 4 meditations a day, and hang out with the people of like consciousness, and if you can do 2 tapes and 10 meditations a day, or as Joel says, do a 30-second meditation every hour or every 30 minutes, or whatever you can do to chip away, it's a chipping away process. Let's talk about the recognition exercises. We have 2 of them now. Has anybody done any work with them? Are we doing any work? Is this a good thing for us to be doing? The first one is, I recognize that since I was born human, I was born hypnotized, and I have been unaware of it. And the second is I recognize that every discord, every misery, every pain that has ever come to me has been due to my acceptance of the hypnotic suggestions of this world.
I had experienced that one today.
Good. Tell us, please.
It came back when I went home for lunch. I picked up Shape magazine where I worked for a short time, and I read it for a little while, and I went back to work, and I got really sad, and it just felt like it was hypnotism because, I may be wrong, but it felt like I was going back to that old belief that that was success, that that was my dream, that was, and that I failed. Mm-hmm. And that's not my belief. I know that this is where I'm supposed to be, and I know that everything happened the way that it's supposed to happen. But for an hour, I kind of listened to that, I failed, and why did I do that? Why did I leave that job?
Okay, and did you recognize that pain, that misery that you were feeling was a result of your acceptance of the human belief that this is the sort of thing which would make you happy or better or misery-free or whatever it is that you think it would happen?
Well, I have that number 2. I have it written on a card at my work where I see it quite a bit.
Good.
And so immediately I saw it. I thought, this is hypnotism. And it didn't go away immediately. I don't know, kind of hung out for a little bit, but I was aware that I was allowing it to.
Yeah, it's a recognition exercise, and that's the point. The point of all these is to get in the habit of recognizing what the truth of this is. Anybody else have any?
Yeah, mine's been like a fish out of water, and when I'm laying on one fin, I'm like aligned with God consciousness, and then I flip over on the other side. Yeah, that's the visualization I'm getting.
That's great.
And I flip over, and then I'm like, I'm getting a very clear distinction between when I'm in the 3D mindset versus coming from a place of God consciousness. And like I said, it's flipping like pretty regularly, and similar to her experience. I'm having a lot of I have similar thing going on with my job right now, and it's I flip from the 3D vision of what the circumstances are versus I'm at total peace with it, and it really has no bearing on who I am.
Well, anybody else want to share about?
Well, I just had some experiences with things this week that were disturbing, and I actually used the flashcard from the other night.
And group, yeah.
Thank you, Father. There's nothing to be done about this. And then when I used that, I had an amazing feeling of peace, which is quite remarkable. And I thought I should be getting really upset about this. There was a feeling that somehow all the things that were bombarding me should make me feel someplace. Well, there's a lot of pressure to. I really like what you said. I really am right there, and I'm recognizing when I'm not. And that maybe is a big step. Right. I'm realizing. But there's so much force to be sucked into that. It's incredible. It's incredible. Maybe I'm just becoming aware of that.
That's the hypnotism.
Yeah,
that's the whole thing.
And it's also why Barbara said that AA works, is because when you come to the group conscience every day to a meeting, that breaks the hypnotism that alcohol is good, And that's what Leelaa is saying. The more you can be around the truth, just like with AA, the more you can be around the truth that it doesn't work, and that, the more you can be around more enlightenment or tapes or books, or the more you can do that, the more you can stay out of the hypnotism. Otherwise, that power, the drag is so powerful. And I use any tool, any flashcard. I write on my hand. I do anything I need to do. I stick notes. I read letters. I put things in my pocket. I put scriptures in my pocket. I do all kinds of things. Like when I was in the film business, I would do all kinds of little tricks. In my drawers, I'd have just one word like I am, or just little every word, and constantly retape, because just retape those grooves in there, and I visualize all kinds of things to like if I'm dealing with a very difficult person, I put Joel between me and them, or Jesus, or whatever I feel, whatever. Just get them right in there, and then I'm protected, and it's amazing how it just dissolves then. And those are just tricks, and as Lee was talking about, it's mind tricks, but it's better than what my mind will do if I don't stick that in there.
Protective work.
I wear invisible raincoats and zip them up, stuff like that. I put myself in a bubble. I do all kinds of stuff. I haven't had to lately. It's been better.
Well, this week let's do the third recognition exercise. The first one, again, is I recognize that since I was born human, I was born hypnotized and have been unaware of it, and that's the condition that we come into. And it is the universal mind, the hypnotism, which hypnotizes us just as a result of being a child. The second one is recognizing that all of discord, misery, etc. is a result of this acceptance of the hypnotism, that all of this discord that we have, all of our negative experiences are a result of accepting this hypnotism, and that's what we've been discussing tonight and last week. The third one is I recognize that the only way to be free of these limitations is to become dehypnotized. That is, to destroy my conditioned belief in good and evil. Now, it's pretty obvious what it means to be dehypnotized, but notice that it says to become dehypnotized, that is, to destroy my conditioned belief in good and evil. Notice that the implication there is that the hypnotism is the conditioned belief in good and evil. So keep that in mind, play with that. Spend this week focusing on this one just because we need to keep moving at the rate. Yeah, I think that I gave them all out at one point. If you don't have them, well, I'll let you copy this one. I passed these out to everybody along with the
She wasn't here.
Yeah, you probably missed that class. There are 7 of them, and we're going to do one a week, and it turns out that that's just about how many more weeks we have, so we will do one each week. When in fact we recognize all of these things. I mean, the path from the 3D world to the 4th dimensional world is recognition. I mean, when you recognize at the very center of you completely hypnotism, when you understand it totally, then you are a 4th dimensional consciousness. So these are just some steps that Barbara put together, which are explicitly walking you through this process, one stage at a time, very carefully, and I think they're really, really quite strong and quite good. And as I say, we'll do one a week this is the 3rd week, we'll do it for the next 4 weeks. And then what you want to do is keep them before you and keep your consciousness on the hypnotism until you break it. Because this week is the one that, the way to be free of these limitations is to be dehypnotized. And we have to do that. And the recognition is the dehypnotization. I think that's it. Let's be quiet for 5 minutes.